Hi, everyone. My name is Mustafa Nifard. I'm in the department, a faculty in the Department of Asian Studies at the University of British Columbia. Thank you very much for joining me and my colleagues during this last event in the spring and winter 2022 series of the Al-Riza Ahmadian Lectures in Iranian and Persianate Studies. Before anything, I would like to acknowledge that UBC Vancouver is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. As you definitely know, and as you can see in the poster, today we are hosting my dear colleague, Dr. Hessam from the Department of Asian Studies at UBC. And also Mr. Mujib Mehrdad, a renowned and accomplished writer and poet from Kabul. The title of the talk is The Impossible Gift of Sense in Rahnavard Zaryāb's The Snakes Under the Silverberry Trees. Before starting, I would like to, as I usually do, very quickly mention a few things. First of all, a big thank you, and this is going to be a very special great thank you to all of those who over the past year have helped me to organize and to run these lectures, many of whom you might not actually see, but we have Connie Nazgul, who helps us with closed captioning, Dr. Farzana Kermani-Nejad, who has been helping us with the beautiful poster designs. I'm really grateful to all of these people, without whose tremendous and valuable help I wouldn't have been able to organize the lectures the way I did. So thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you in the future. I also would like to give a big thank you to all of the audiences. During different lectures, we had about 15 to 16 lectures during this year. And as they say in Persian, "Mustami' sahib sukhan ra bar sar zouq avarad," we could apply that to the relationship that we as a team also have with the audience, of the way the audience can increase the enthusiasm of a particular speaker. And that way, we have also always become more and more enthusiastic by the knowledge that our audiences like what we do, and also care enough to let us know how we can improve our work. So we are so grateful to you and to all of the audiences we have had, and we hope that we will be having you again in the future. Finally, during this particular lecture, as usual, I would like to ask you to please post your questions, if you have any, in the chat box. And of course, after the lecture and after the discussion, we hope that the speaker and or the discussant, to whomever they are addressed, will address those questions. And finally, I would like to introduce our speaker and discussant. Today's presenter, Dr. Hessam, is Assistant Professor of Teaching Persian Language and Culture at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Dehqani earned his first PhD in linguistics from Allame Tabatabai University, working on the structural analysis and phenomenological study of Persian literature in 2012. He then earned another PhD in philosophy from Boston College in 2019. Between August 2019 and December 2020, he was a postdoctoral fellow and associate researcher at Harvard Divinity School and the Center for the Middle Eastern Studies, where he focused his research on the formation of the Persianate identity in Persian mystic literature. He has presented on the phenomenological interpretation of Persian mystic literature regularly at Harvard University and Boston College. Since last year, in his position as the Assistant Professor of Teaching Persian Language and Culture, he has been running the Persian Language Program, which offers a variety of Persian language courses and activities. Since March 2021, Dr. Dehqani has started Persian Literature Reading Club to promote public humanities in Persian language and for the Persianate community at large. The aim of this series is to connect the scholars in humanities and particularly Persian literature and culture to the community and provide a safe space for the interaction between Persianate community at the University of British Columbia. To do that, Dr. Dehqani and a team of enthusiastic volunteer students have been holding weekly literature reading sessions and have invited some of the most prominent figures of modern Persian literature to share their invaluable experience with the students and the community. And if I'm not wrong, during one of those sessions, they've also had the pleasure of inviting Mr. Mujib as a guest, one of the authors. You can receive more information and the videos of the previous sessions, as well as the schedule of the upcoming sessions by following UBC Persian Literature Club's Instagram page. And I would ask that my colleague An kindly, oh yes, thank you so much, An. Actually, if you go to the chat box, you can see all three links for the Instagram, Facebook, and Telegram pages for this club's activities. And finally, yes, and so all of these social media spaces, which gives you access to the stories they read every week, and the physical location of the events every week if you ever intended to join the event in person. And I forgot to mention that these are the sessions are all free of charge for the community and in hybrid mode. And I assume that means that they are held both in person and online at the same time. And today's discussant, Mr. Mujib Mehrdad, poet, playwright, and translator from Afghanistan, is the author of the poetry collections Gladiators Are Still Dying, published in 2007, which is also the winner of the Afghan Civil Society's Literature Contest. Another book, The Fishes Have Fled Our Veins, published in 2008, and another book, Audience, published in 2009, and also the author of the collection of essays, The Rain Past. He has translated Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg, Sylvia Plath, Langston Hughes, Mayakovsky, Tagore, and others into Dari. He's a board member of the literary organization Kashani Navisandegan, House of Authors, and teachers, and he teaches Persian literature at Al-Biruni University in Kapisa. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Hessam Dehqani, so please join me in welcoming him. Hessam Jan, we can't wait to hear what you have to share with us. And thank you very much to both of you for accepting our invitation.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Mustafa Jan, for the kind invitation. My thanks and appreciation to the Alireza Ahmadian family for the tremendous support for the talks and the Persianate culture and community at large. And today's talk is I am giving the talk, albeit virtually, from Vancouver, Point Grey, Vancouver, which is located on the unceded territory of Musqueam people. And my thanks to the audience as well for taking the time to spend the afternoon listening to this. I hope they won't regret it. So the title of the talk is The Impossible Gift of Sense. So let me share my screen if that is possible. Yes. All right. Does everybody see my screen? Can somebody
Beautiful.
give me
I can
okay.
see it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the Silverberry tree, the Rakht Senjed, which looks like an olive tree, very much from the same family of olive. The Impossible Gift of Sense in Snakes Under the Silverberry Tree by Rahnavard Zaryāb. So in the time or term given to me, I will speak for negatively first as to what this study is not going to undertake, and then positively or quasi-positively, only in narrative and talking about story, what Zaryāb posits as the meaning of the literary work as the gift of sense, in French, la donation de sens, or Singebung in German, sense giving. So part one of the talk would be what isn't this paper or this study about? Muhammad Azam Rahnavard Zaryāb was not only a prolific writer and novelist, but also a cultural, political, and literary figure in the story of a nation called Afghanistan and contemporary Persian literature. I urge everyone here to study the influence and impact of him as a political and cultural figure, as well as his great number of short stories and novels. It takes a whole book or several books, in fact, to delve into his work and stories and novels. And that is, of course, one of the things that's going to be beyond the scope of this study. Again, we hold another session on Friday at 6:30 p.m. Under the UBC Persian Literature Reading Club to celebrate the legacy of Zaryāb in Persian. That session would be in Persian. Again, I invite everybody to join us in that session on Friday, 6:30 p.m. PDT. So the work is not about the writer, about Zaryāb. In fact, his work, meaning the snakes under the Silverberry tree, was introduced to me, some may even say was given to me as a gift, when as part of my dissertation, my first dissertation about literary theory, I was trying to find an example in Persian literature that could confirm Henry James's thesis about the nature of the act of reading and interpreting literature in his short novel, The Figure in the Carpet. There, at the turn of the 20th century, when philosophers like Edmund Husserl were trying to pin down the structure of consciousness in a logical, mathematical way, James writes a curious novel debunking an applicability of such universalist approaches to literature. I don't have time to go to that story, but I did a phenomenological reading of that for the first chapter of my dissertation, following Wolfgang Iser, demonstrating that in fact the nature of the meaning of a literary text is pictorial, like a picture in like a figure in a Persian carpet, according to Henry James. And can only be appreciated in the meaning of the work of art or work of literature, can only be appreciated in the very search and the act of reading. Now, I had heard Zaryāb's story from a friend before, and it all came to me without why, like a gift. While James's novelette was a straightforward while James's novelette was straightforwardly played out as the search for the meaning of a literary text, with his characters being a novelist and a critic, I found Zaryāb's story almost the same structure, the same claim, albeit in an enigmatic and surrealistic way. So this is. So let me 2, 3. So this is what I wrote in part 1. That is not, first of all, it is not about Zaryāb's character. It is, nor is it about the story, how his story fit into Zaryāb's general magical realism or surrealism. Is not also going to be about positing or refuting any single interpretation of the story. And many of these kinds of interpretations are possible from his works, including this one. I know that and I acknowledge that. Yet I'm going to demonstrate how this story is the story or the narrative of the act of reading, meaning that the story is about how stories come to be to begin with. So let's start with the part 2, which is the gift and deconstruction, basically. The concept of the gift is not like any other concept, but is a paradigmatic one. Why do I refer to the gift? Because it's not like any other concept. It's a paradigmatic one. A lot of philosophers, especially in the 20th century, brought this concept to our attention. Phenomenology, and especially Heidegger and Derrida's allusion to this concept, is by no means accidental. Derrida refers to Heidegger's formulation of being as es gibt, translated as there is, or il y a in French, which can be translated in English literally as it gives. So instead of saying there is a thing, it gives a thing. In French, ça donne, for example, in order to gesture against the correspondence formulation of truth. The whole story is that in order for a thing to make sense, or the proposition there is a thing to be true, the correspondence theory of truth, which is the logical truth, mandates that there has to be a thing in mind and outside world at the same time, as if synchronically, systematically, symmetrically. So for things to make sense, meaning and thing has to be present at the same time. There is, the temporality is completely present. Now, es gibt brings a new dimension of time to this equation. It gives whatever it might be, whatever that it might be, denotes that the thing is not yet present, but it is coming. The thing is not yet present, and the judgment as to the truth and the sense of the thing is yet to come. So this is an introduction of futurity in the structure of meaning as present. Present being the meaning one has of things, and the gift of sense as the force or the movements towards the possibilities of meaning, which come in time, and one needs to wait for and anticipate them. So later Derrida found in the gift-giving practices studied in Marcel Maus's classical masterpiece, The Gift, the same binary opposition between present and gift, but yet acknowledged by Mauss. So let's go to Marcel Mauss. So first I showed what is the significance of the gift. Why do we refer even to gift? And now Derrida finds a real human example of the practice of gift giving in the study of Marcel Maus's The Gift. Here first. So the first thing was that gift of sense as opposed to representation theory or correspondence theories. The second is that Maus's The Gift and the critique, it comes as the critique of capitalist mercantilism, where every action and service is done for a price, with a strict logical and calculative mentality. Being rich means holding a lot of capital. So Mauss tries to question that, showing that actually what comes as the dignity of somebody who has a lot of capital is actually rooted in another sense of interaction and exchange, which is not based on having, but giving, not holding and hoarding and storing, but giving, right? So Mauss looks for an alternative kinds of communal transaction and finds potlatch. It's a gift-giving, a gift reciprocity event in studying the what he calls pre-economic societies of East Asia and North America. He shows modern economic transactions are rooted and originated from gift giving as opposed to storing and hoarding the capital. So he's showing where this relationship of community relationship or economic transaction are coming from, and it is not actually for serving as benefiting yourself only, or for some selfish gathering and collecting and hoarding, but it is starts with gift giving, right? So for Derrida now, this it is interesting for Derrida, and that's why he goes to this, because of what I would say in a minute. But at the same time, the very fact that he is reducing that gift to the same market economy, as if I am giving to receive what Mauss calls mana or dignity, right? Derrida says, okay, so that's the same as market economy. You are reducing the gift to market economy. So instead of showing that the homogeneity of gift and market economy, Derrida wants to say that gift, if such a thing exists, should be freed completely from market economy if it wants to make sense as a gift. So the definition of gift by Mauss lets it be freer than Mauss himself imagines it. So in the blind spots of Mauss' theory, he finds the lever for freedom, for opening, for new horizon, for meaning. And what are those levers for opening that opens the door to the new meaning for gift? So gift for, there are two levers, and that is one, eros. So Mauss introduces eros as opposed to logos as what runs the show in creating a bond between people and as a justification of actions and sense of things. Listen, so from Aristotle to Hegel, what makes things meaningful is logos. It's the logic of things. It's the calculative and reason behind it. Now, curiously, Mauss is pointing towards a direction of a drive, a force that makes sense beyond logos. So beyond logos for Aristotle is meaninglessness. Is as Aristotle says that if you don't abide by logic, you are a plant, basically. But here it shows that Mauss shows that there is something beyond logos still making sense. So when logos ends, when correspondence, when the present meaning of things ends, there is still some remainder that starts generating sense. Circle of exchange and nomos is the second lever. Nomos, or order, that exists in the word economy, meaning the nomos of the home, the nomos of present, the nomos of staying at home. Again, this nomos, again, what makes sense in economic mentality of Aristotelian or Hegelian or basically even Marxist mentality, it is the nomos is the calculative mentality, the tit for tat mentality of this for that. Now he's pointing to another nomos, that another order that is beyond the calculation. Doesn't make sense. People do not give gifts for a reason. They give gifts exponentially, excessively, without why. That's the meaning of the gift. I don't intend to give, and the gift, if such a thing exists, should be beyond intention, beyond calculation. So these two levers would open the gift towards what Derrida wants as the impossible gift. Gift, if such a thing exists, has to be free of intention and intentionality of the donor, gift object, and the donee of the gift. This is very much close to the definition of love for Lacan, if we wanted to talk about it in Q&A. So creativity and multiplicity of meaning, as opposed to logical one meaning, one thing, one meaning. For Aristotle, for example, if a thing that means two things, it means nothing, right? But here, when logic is gone, when the logos is gone, when we are done with the logos of the present, we are in the realm of creativity and multiplicity of meaning, which arises in the annulment and denial of any kind of embodiment of the gift. The gift is only possible in a special kind of thinking, which is, as Derrida claimed, this thinking is not really, is irreducible to intuition, irreducible also to perception, judgment, experience, science, even faith. It's a kind of movement of time itself. Nevertheless, it offers itself to poetic imagination. Again, this poetic imagination is not Kantian, because Kantian poetic imagination, in some readings at least, can be bound by reason. For Derrida, the gift is the secret. The secret is the last word of the gift, which is also the last word of the secret. This is the quote by Derrida in his Gift of Death. Gift is the gift to come, future as opposed to present, directionality as opposed to symmetry. The it of it gives, as gift, is the time or thinking associated with a kind of absolute forgetting. Again, we can go back to it in the Q&A. So let's very quickly go to snakes under the Silverberry tree and see how this annulment of the gift happens there. Thesis is whenever the present economy of gift exchange is annulled, when the meaning that is present to us is annulled, thinking, imagination, and narrative begins. So the story is a very rich one, replete with mythological, political, and historical connotations. But I urge you to read the story with an eye on the question of the gift of sense. Hold on. Yeah, so however, so there is replete with mythological, political, and historical connotations. However, I would like to show how this story is not just one story among others, but the originary story. About how stories come to be from get-go and how they are read and interpreted. Let us very quickly shed light only on what is meant by the gift in this story. The main claims about the story are as follows. Number one, the story itself demonstrates that the feminist, Marxist, psychoanalytic, cognitive, critical discourse, analytic critiques, and the like are only possible because of the annulment of sense in the story by the admission that, quote, no one knows what one is doing in this world. I don't either, ha, 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 unquote. The story is not simply a representation of literary theory like James's figure in the carpet, but an enactment of the operation of the story, of the poetic work, by constantly luring new readers into the spelled search for the meaning and interpreting. Yet the moment one approaches, one appropriates the meaning of the secret, its sense recedes back towards the possibilities of meaning to come. The narrator of the story here is a child who opens the story by citing his mom's warning, quote, do not go anywhere near the silverberry trees as they have snakes, unquote. And then her story and begins her story. Now notice that the very first line of the story has what I would like to call narrative layering, meaning that from the very beginning the narrator tells us that, oh, let's listen to my mom telling a story. So you are already in a layer of another narrative. So notice the double layering in the narration, which covers the secret which are about to hear under another story and lures the reader in from the very beginning to set out on the journey of reading the poetic formulation of the secret, or the metaphor which stands for the secret. The narrative's mother spells out the public opinion or superstition about trees and snakes. She and the rest of the people of the village where the narrator lives, near Ghazni in Afghanistan, have a legend to tell about the snakes under the silverberry trees. For them, snakes and their meanings, as scary as it might be, is present. The narrator, the child, has an everyday economic understanding of the sense of things around them. The hero of this legend is, of course, the symbol of power, and that is Sultan Mahmud Ghaznavi. The story which the child has heard time and time again from his mom is that these snakes were, and this is on the slide, in the slide you can see, these snakes were brought to Ghazni from Somanat in India by Yaminun Dole Mahmud Ghaznavi, and are imprisoned here until the judgment day. It was believed by people that the snakes were these sorcerers in one of the temples in India who forgot to bow and surrender to the power of the Sultan when he went for one of his religious wars or qaza to eradicate idol worshipping in India. The legend is very elaborate, but the important characteristics of it is that Sultan's version of the story of what the snakes were in the public opinion is that of Sultan's domination and sovereignty under the title of Islam over idol worshippers whose magic tricks are no match for the Sultan and Islam. This is what I mean by the appropriation of the secret or the gift to a present meaning. So the rule is this: whenever the secret of the gift is turned into market economy, its virtual center constituted only by time, this time now is filled with the real center. which takes control of the nomos, or the order of the economy, and exploits its energy towards making itself more legitimate. That is what has happened with Sultan Mahmud. He has appropriated the secret, make it his own, sit in the center, and exploited its power. Likewise, one can appropriate a single meaning to a text and reduce every single detail of the literary text to the role that they play to confirm the single central meaning. But then the narrator, the kid, cannot stop thinking about the beauty of the flowers across the river under the silverberry trees. And one day, while following a butterfly intoxicated with the odor of the flowers, crosses the river and finds himself stuck within the bush under the silverberry trees. He has entered the realm of otherness, and the affective dimension of the text intensifies that. He is scared and benumbed. I thought I was under a spell, he says. That is, he's clearly entering the realm of the unknown, where things do not make the same sense anymore. It is very much like the realm of the revelation to the prophets, or the domain of literature, where the meaning of everything is given by the very experience of the secret / the gift itself. It is where every sign becomes a floating signifier and a metaphor, impregnated with the possibility of sense, what I would like to call the gift of sense. But there comes the second and more artistic and monstrous trick by Zaryāb. The child hears a movement. The child stuck in the bush hears a movement from among the branches of the tree and thinks he's finished and bit by the snakes. To his surprise, without why and out of the blue, there comes an old, dark-skinned and very thin man, associated with the physical features of the snake later in the story, with a dark and bitter smile on his face, with a bitter ha ha ha. "What are you doing here, old man?" the narrator asks. "No one knows what one is doing in this world, neither do I," he retorts. Assuming that the old man is one of the occasional Sufi dervishes who pass their village, the child wants to warn him about the existence of the snakes. But it is the old man who asks if he's afraid of them, as if he belongs to the strange dwelling place of the snakes. The old man asks the kid to sit next to him and listens to his story, which begins like, "When I was a child, my mom used to warn me that beware not to approach the silverberry trees, for they have snakes." This is the moment that the circle of the narrative layering begins the repetition of the same event for 5 generations. Little by little, present, objective, and real intentionality of the kid as well as the reader wears off, and she is drawn into the realm of imagination, stories, and legends. That's where, after 5 rounds of turning in the circle, stealthily but calmly, the snake creeps into the story without us being afraid or guarded anymore. The old man says finally that he saw a snake under the tree only once. It was dark-skinned, old, and thin, coughed a lot. The shift in the intentionality is strikingly clear. Remember, we are done with the present economy of legends of Sultan. That is annulled by the kid going past the river to the realm of the secret, saying no to the present economy, and now he's in the realm of imagination. So the intentionality is already imaginative intentionality. But this is strikingly clear, and when the reader is not even surprised, and the reader is not even surprised when the snake begins to talk. We were in the realm of real, and suddenly the reader reads that the snake starts talking, and we are not even surprised. It is like Alice's rabbit hole, where everything is possible now. The snake says how he was living in the vicinity of the temple of Shiva, the god of wrath, the protector god. Where is my file? This is the next. Yeah, the protector god. They were living next to that in peace and comfort. Worshippers in the temple in India respected him, meaning the snake, for reasons he does not know. In fact, there is another circle of gift giving and secret sharing between those people as well, which is demolished and put to disastrous end by Sultan's Islamic wars or Gaza with them. The important thing to remember is that in this interpretation, we do not have a good and evil sides or characters, but interaction of forces which reveals the possibilities of sense-making. Sultan's encounter with the snake and his demolition and robbery of the temples is very significant. Sultan is the force which in this case annuls the sanctity of the temple and exploits the friendly gesture of the snake to his benefit. The snake's gesture as acting calmly, who is merely trying to calm Sultan's troops and show that he's not dangerous and not going to hurt anyone. The snake, monks, people, women, and children are all praying to Shiva, pleading him to do something and help against Sultan's genocidal actions. Yet Shiva is silent. No god has ever saved the people. Sultan's troops interpret the event as the holy and sacred role of Sultan as a force of God to destroy unbelievers, and he enters the circle of legends that the narrator began the whole story with. The legend which is reiterated by everyone in the village. Thereby, Zaryāb once again marks the genesis of another story, or any story for that matter. Although tragic, that is how stories are created, by annulling the present and tacit meaning of actions in present economy. Snake, Shiva's temple, all actions and settings in reality lose their present meaning and begin their journey as floating signifiers in the narrative. Snakes end up being witches and sorcerers who were defeated by Sultan, etc. Subsequently, the humiliated snake is brought to Sultan's palace and is made a tool for mockery with Sultan's clown. He is teased and tortured and laughed at, taken out of the realm of the gift. Snake is present object, easily humiliated. The only person who understands that the snake used to have a role in the economy of the temple and for the Indian people is Abu Rayhan Biruni, a philosopher, scientist, and a historical figure that plays a curious role in this story. How much time do I have, Anne?
You still have time, Hessam, don't worry. Please go ahead.
Oh, good. Abu Rayhan Biruni is a contemporary of Ibn Sina and represents many other Persian philosophers and thinkers of the time under the reign of Sultan's court. He's the founder of the discipline of anthropology and has done incredible ethnographic studies of Indian people. He is, on the one hand, a scientist who objectifies the snake with his scientific experiments, and on the other hand, the anthropologist who knows and respects the sanctity of the mystery and as a result secretly admires and respects the snake. Finally, they throw the snake out of the palace and he manages to escape and live by the Silverberry tree. The last sentence of the snake are expression of aporias, the dead ends, which are never resolved, the problems which are never resolved, neither in the story nor in reality. Why did Sultan need to attack India? Why Shiva remained idle and silent? Why should the snake be humiliated and tortured? And really, why do gods never give this nation a break? Larger Iran, including Afghanistan of today, had always been the scene of violent troops and tribes coming for the wealth and resources of the land, demolishing everything on their way, including people's beliefs. And when has ever such beliefs saved these people? But that is beside the point in this study, which looks at the meaning of meaning making itself. Zaryāb's response is not a mere sociological anthropological proposition. Quite the contrary, he gestures against all such universalizations as sultanic gestures that demolished the complexity of the historical mythical situation to a naive and stupid response. The story of Zaryāb, which ends with the same admission that, quote, no one knows what one is doing in this world, me neither, unquote, and more importantly that, quote, this is the customary way of the world, ha, 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 unquote. This shows that all these universalist interpretations are futile. No catharsis and no significant interpretation, but wonder and an invitation to enjoy the feast of thinking in reading the story again and again. a very curious invitation to thinking which does not come as a result of a tragic catharsis, but as a result of a bitter laugh and comedy. As Aristotle admits, comedy is not opposite of tragedy, but the other side of it. Comedy is a tragedy on the surface, according to Aristotle. Finally, then, it was the thesis of this study that altogether positing a meaning about a work of poetics, a metaphorical work, and speaking positively about the meaning can only be strategically and temporarily appropriate. Thus, an attempt to appropriate any universal, atemporal meaning for a literary text is futile, or else the reduction of a poetic text to a live metaphor, métaphore vive, to mere everyday and mundane speech, or a very old, thin, and dying snake. Thank you for your patience and time.
Thank you very much, Hessam John, for this very sophisticated talk. And of course, you finished way earlier than you had expected, so you were good with timing. Thank you.
Great.
Yes, wonderful. At this point, I would like to invite Mr. Mujib Mehrdad. Mujib John, please feel free to join Dr. Dehqani for a conversation. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. Thanks from Mr. Dehqani for his wonderful speech about one of the most famous contemporary short stories of Afghanistan. Belongs to one of the most prominent writers of Afghanistan. Actually, Rahnavard Zaryāb was not only a writer, but as Mr. Dehqani mentioned, he was a political activist, a cultural activist, and he was also a journalist, and he has impacted all these aspects in last 2 decades in Afghanistan. That is what makes Mr. Rahnavard Zaryāb famous in Afghanistan, and even in the region, in Iran, he is quite known for his, especially for his story writing. Actually, I went through the dissertation, the Persian version of the dissertation of Mr. Dehqani. He has put a huge effort to actually to articulate his ideas and to find a connection between the concept of gift in Derrida's philosophy, and also to implement that or to apply that in Rahnavard Zaryāb's short story. Of course, he has put a huge effort, and he has been successful in this regard. But I have some questions that I want to ask from Mr. Dehqani. But before that, I want to elaborate a little more about the story and the connection of the story with the theoretical background which Mr. Dehqani has been provided. The idea of gift, actually the philosophy of gift, as Mr. Dehqani gave a chronological account of the gift in Western philosophy, but at the end he summed up with Derrida's understanding or interpretation of the gift, and then from there he starts application of the idea of gift in Rahnavard Zaryāb's short story. For sure, when he talks about the gift, according to Derrida, he wants to avoid the economic reciprocity, which means that the giver of the gift would have to be unaware that what he is giving, and the receiver unaware of what the giver identity is. Also, when he sums up at the end, he comes and he says that the gift is the secret. And a gift is always a gift to come, something that you have to expect. like a secret that you're waiting for its unfolding, but it doesn't happen. So with this understanding of the meaning of the gift, Mr. Dehqani goes towards the explanation and interpretation of the Rahnavard Zaryāb's story. My question is this. For me, there are actually two layers of secrecy in this story. One is for the protagonist, which is a kid, which he is a kid, and he is a narrator. He is the narrator of the story, and for him, actually, he's trying as a kid. What we expect is that kids are trying to explore the world here, the world around him, and when he wants to cross the river and goes to the jungle close to their house, and especially to the bush, which there is silverberry trees, the mother warns him to not go. Actually, the story here starts with enigma, with a mystery, with a secret. But as we go towards the middle of the story and we go towards the ends of the story, the secret gradually and slowly disappears. I mean, we see that the secret of the snake and silverberry is exposed at the end. The story of Sultan Mahmud Ghaznavi and his attack to his invasion of India is clear for us. The only secret remains in the story. The only secret that remains in the story is the silence of the Shiva, because Mahmud Ghaznavi invades India. He goes to the temple, he destroys everything, he loots the jewelries, but the Shiva, according to his followers as the most powerful god of India, the Trinity god, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, he is silent in front of, before all these brutalities that the Sultan is doing in the temple. But my question is, this secret, whether Mr. Dehqani is talking about a secret which is in the text. I mean, when we go towards the end of the story, for example, maybe the silence of Shiva is a mystery for the follower, for the snake, but the silence of Shiva is not a mystery for the reader. Then, by this, what does Mr. Dehqani means by talking about the gift, or as a metaphor for the secret in the story? I mean, the story is no more a secret when you go towards the end of it. But there are some secrets for the characters within the story. I don't know whether I can explain myself to Mr. Dehqani or not.
I hope I understand your question.
I mean, we are
correctly.
Derrida is actually is talking about the secrecy of the text, the form of the form and the secrecy that a form can produce, that suspends the meaning. Yeah. But in this story, do we have that kind of secrecy? I mean, within the story, I mean, in story as a form, as a text.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to read it. And yeah, it was a very complicated text, and I really appreciate you spending the time and the torture with the text and reading it. The thing is that the story is not the story of the secret. It's the story of the impossibility of the secret, annulment of the secret. the moments in the text when the secret is demolished and is given rise to the productivity of meaning, right? So I don't want to say that there is a secret in the text that is never told. I want to say that if the meaning is generated, if you accept the fact that this text has Marxist interpretation, psychoanalytic interpretation, all these interpretations of this text, if you accept that, this means that the text stops you from reducing it to one meaning, right? Why is that? Because it doesn't give you that final say. It doesn't say my interpretation is this, interpret me like that. It gives you, actually, at the end, it ends with, no one knows what one is doing here, me neither, ha ha ha. You know, it finishes actually not even with a catharsis, like a tragic catharsis that you change your behavior or anything. You are just in wonder, what happened, right? What happened? So you are right that to some extent, little by little, the secrets are opened for the characters little by little, or for the reader little by little. But the very fact that Shiva never responds, the very fact that we don't know how can a snake talk, right? And what is the snake itself? You know, the snake itself is the secret, is the unachievable and irreducible point in the story. You cannot, can you tell me what the snakes are? What is the meaning of the snakes? Whatever you say is reduction of it to a present meaning, right? So the being of a snake itself as the secret, the snake is what is hidden under the silverberry tree. It's the dark thing that is there. You know, it's like a secret that is not known, and that doesn't give to complete reduction, right? You can, of course, reduce it to any meaning, yeah, for sure, but you are depriving yourself of the creativity and multiplicity that the celebration of the secret as secret can bring to you.
So you mean, I mean, gift as a meaning, as an impossible meaning, for you means the multiplicity of interpretation in a text. Am I right?
Is the place that gives interpretation. Gift is time, right? Let me explain it again. So when I say this is an apple. What is an apple? What denotes in the outside world? So this is correspondence theory, right? Apple, yeah. Meaning, apple representation. Now imagine that I say, what is apple? We're gonna see. The meaning is going to come. It's gonna be given, right, in future. So the correspondence breaks, and you become the realm of meaning becomes multiple, becomes poetic, becomes the signifier becomes a floating signifier, waiting to be connected to signified, right? It's a deconstruction of Saussurean signifier and signified that is a one-to-one relationship. Once again, he's doing the same thing with the gift. So the gift makes it possible for the signified to become floating, to become future.
Okay, but my second question is why you choose the post-structuralist approach for analyzing this text? I think maybe a structuralist approach towards this text would have worked better. I mean, for example, the binary opposition. For example, it is when it comes to the whole story is about invasion of Sultan to India. It is like in one side you have the biggest emperor of Islam world. In the other other side you have the Shiva, the strongest god of Indians, and you have the confrontation, and you see that the emperor overcomes the god of Indians, and he destroys his temples, and he destroys his statues. So do you think structural approach would have been better rather than, adapting a post-structural for this story? Or
yeah, so thank you again for the question. It's great. So the whole approach is a gesture as to how all the interpretations, including a structuralist, becomes possible, right? Structuralist approach comes at a price. Is it really that the Sultan, we also have the figure of the Caliph in this story. Is it really that the Sultan is the figure of Islam and is the villain figure completely, and we have good and bad like that in this story? We might be able to make those binaries at a very dangerous cost of reducing a lot of things, marginalizing a lot of other things, and deleting a lot of things. That's a sultanic action, I wanted to say. That's a appropriation of something that can be much more creative, right? So again, I don't want to say that a structuralist approach is wrong, or feminist approach is wrong for that matter, or psychoanalytic approach is wrong, right? Even the Lacan's approach would be even closest to what I would want to say. But again, how is that some story can mean all that thing? You know, I was struck by the multiplicity of meaning in this text. This text is so rich that it was like Hafiz's poems, that whatever you do, you have done disservice to the work. You know, whatever you do, you have done disservice to the work. So coming across this impossibility, you know, in this multifarious dimensions of meaning in this text, I thought, okay, so what is that makes this possible? I have the same approach with Hafiz too in another lecture, in another essay, that how is that possible that Hafiz can mean everything, you know, or the Quran can mean everything, you know? How is that this is so multiple? Why? What makes it rich? And in this text, I think that the very operation, the very operation of the story, in the story, is giving me cues or clues as to what the story is. Remember, the thing starts from a realist intentionality. We are in the village, we go for play, and suddenly a boy starts talking to a snake, and the snake starts talking. What happened? You know, it's the genesis of a story. A story was created. Oh, how was the story created? This is much deeper than any single interpretation. Right? Again, we have with Sultan Mahmud, a snake is being respected by all people, and Shiva's temple is being respected with all people. It's harmony. Everything is good, and suddenly, and everything is real there. You know, people are and know that this is the snake, and suddenly, the snake turns into a sorcerer, a witch, a magical things. You know, what happened? It's the genesis of a story. What happened that a story was generated there, you know? Again, so every time the economy of present is annulled, a story is generated. I cannot help but admitting that there is this pattern in the story, right? That is more originary than any particular interpretation of a text.
And you're referring to, in your dissertation, you're referring to a proposition that appears in 2-3 places, including at the end of the story, and it means it explains the complexity of the meaning of life that we do not understand, and the meaning of the actions that we do not understand. That the old man is saying, I don't know what I do in this world, and it is
no one knows what I do in this world. No one knows.
Yeah, it explains the complexity of the Sultan's action towards Indians, and also it is something. It shows the lack of our understanding of our situation, and it is actually it confirms that secrecy of the gift, that something
Exactly.
that we wait, the meaning of, we don't know the meaning of the life completely. We have to wait what will come next.
Yes.
And it is, similar to what you are trying to articulate in your theoretical work in this dissertation. Thank you very much, Dr. Deghani.
Thank you so much, Mujib John, for your questions. It was great. Thank you so much.
I think we have to open the space for others to also have their own questions.
Of course, thank you very much, Mr. Mehrdad, for the very thoughtful questions. Before we go on to the audience, Hessam John, has the story or any of the other stories in that collection also been translated into English? I remember having read the Persian, but just for those who might not, know Persian, are these available in English at all?
No, I am actually translating this one. I have translated this one, but I haven't published it. But I have to translate a couple of Zaryābs to be able to publish them as a collection. If anybody wants to help me, just come on. I mean, this is the Zaryāb with this story stands on the peak of modern Persian literature. I mean, this is the best. This is the best of the best. In short stories, at least. So yeah, unfortunately, no, it hasn't been translated as far as I know.
But as you mentioned, we should be expecting your translation in the future to be published.
Hopefully,
right?
yeah. Hopefully.
Wonderful. So I also invite the audience, if they have any questions for Dr. Deghani and or Mr. Mehrdad, please go ahead and ask them. Okay, so far, I don't think we've had any questions by the audience. I should also thank all of the audience for being here today. I can see some familiar names here. Some of my colleagues, Dr. Mehrdad was here, Dr. Shahbaz, Dr. Shabani Jadidi. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, thanks everybody else for joining us, many of whom I unfortunately don't know, but again, I really appreciate their presence here. So while we're waiting for questions, probable questions by the audience, are there any final things you might want to mention about either of you about this story and or Dr. Deghani's talk?
Can I add something more? I think it is important to say, for me to talk about the obsession of Ustad Zaryāb with the history, since he was, he had a huge knowledge of the history of our region, from Afghanistan to Iran, classic poets and writers. And at the same time, he had a huge knowledge of the history of this region. That is why all of his novels are somehow has links to some historical events in the past. It is not only this novel of Snakes Under the Silverberry trees, but for example, his Gulnar and the Mirror is another beautiful and very famous novel of him. And also there is another novel which is again a combination of the present and the past. Its name is Chargird Qala Gashtum Payzi Bitla Yaftum, which comes from a folk song, Afghani folk song. The name, it's very difficult for me to translate it in English. Again, it is again, he is obsessed with the history. All his famous novels are like that. He is like going forward and past, back in present and the past. And it is one of actually his techniques and also one of his approaches in his writing, one of the characteristics of most of his works.
Thank you very much, Mujib John, for adding this point. In the meantime, we have also received a few questions. One is by Patricio or Patricio, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this, Figueroa, who asks, I think they have asked a couple of questions. So they ask how Derrida's theory explained this story. That's one question. Can we have the Persian text of this story? And also, yes, those are the two questions by the same person. Hessam John?
I think that the question is for me. So the whole work was to elaborate in that how Derrida's notions would help us understand that. It's Derrida does not have a theory, but in an intervention, meaning that he looks at the text and sees where the openings that are brought with that text, uses the parts that are left unsaid or unmentioned, like most talks about eros, talks about nomos, but reduce them to the same logic of economy. And Derrida picks up that, and again, the image is the lever to open our horizon to a new sense. I see in the story the same process happening as to meanings of, as to how things start to make sense. Derrida's whole attempt, starting from of grammatology, his dissertation, was to show that was a gesture against structuralism that that tried to pin down the meaning of things in a structural totality, like long. For him, meaning making doesn't happen in a structural pinning down things in present in a differential sense to one another, but in the process, in movement, in creation of sense. He has different names for it. He has difference or metaphoricity, or different notions, different terms for that. But all in all, I see in the process of the story itself the enactment of Derrida's theory. That's why, for me, Derrida was relevant here. I hope that little response that question, because after all, it's very, very complicated question and needs a lot of elaborate response. And what was the second question?
So Hessam, the second question, and we just received a correction by the same person, Kamil Shafizadeh. Could you elaborate on the significance of, and they say I meant silverberry tree, not fig tree. Could you elaborate on the significance of the silverberry tree? Why not walnut tree, for instance? And then there will be another question, as I would say the last question.
Oh, this question could be for Mujib too. He has lived next to silverberry trees, so you tell me.
It's a beautiful question. Why not walnut tree? Because as Mr. Dehqani explains it at the beginning of her speech, that there is a tale in Afghanistan. It's a folk tale that, for example, when the silver tree start blooming, it affects the things that they're around it. For example, whether it is snakes or the girls, even the young girls, or in this folk concept, the girls are also prevented from going towards the silverberry tree on the time of blooming, because it says that maybe it will make you mad. But the connection of the silverberry tree with the snake is very famous. That in that time, there are snakes under the silverberry tree, and the kids should not to get close to those areas. This is a tale. This is all what I understand and I know about it. I hope you liked it.
Interesting. So
Wonderful, wonderful. But it's there are a lot of other interpretations and connotations to Silverberry. Of course, the erotic effect of Senjed itself, that we put it on our Hafsin of Nowruz as well. It has productivity and erotic. The fact that they said don't send girls towards Silverberry tree because it is erotic. It makes you mad, meaning that you fall in love, you know. So that's why it is present in our Hafsin too. It's fertile, right? It makes people fertile. So that's one of them. It's the realm of fertility, productivity, erotic phenomenon. You know, it's eros, right? This is one. Another thing is that if you look at the shape of the tree, it's enigmatic by itself. You know, it's the branches are all as if they're hiding something. It's not like any other tree. It's if you remember the olive tree, for example, when it is blooming and when it is with it's like a bush hiding something. It's the shape, even it's enigmatic too. Yeah, there are the most important thing is that as Mujib said right away, in most of the stories of Zaryāb, he uses folk tales a lot. Even in Gulnar and Ayene, we have another folk tale, and not one, a lot of maybe 2 or 3 folk tales in one story. So he uses the common understandings, the folk tales, to shed light on the realities that we may forget, you know, we may have forgotten, and point us to the direction of their sense.
Wonderful, thank you. So as Mr. Mehrdad mentioned, it at least shows the late Rahnavard's informed and information about the folk tales and the folklore. So having roots in deep knowledge of the people's lore, etc. And as Dr. Zaryāb also mentioned, it of course doesn't consume all the meanings because there's a lot of symbols over there as well. And pertinently, we had simultaneously, when Dr. Zaryāb, you were elaborating on that question, we also had a pertinent note coming in by Dr. Shahbaz. So I'll just read it quickly because this is related. Dr. Shahbaz says, thank you very much for the interesting session. Since this novel has a strong symbolic dimension, I suggest considering the psychoanalytical approach in reading the text. In Indian classics, the tree has semantic connections with femininity, and the snake, or Sanskrit, I hope I'm not mispronouncing this, Naga, has strong connections with sexuality, taking the ambience the author created around the snakes and the tree with temptation, risk, and danger, desire, mystery, old man. I suggest reading the symbols from psychoanalytical aspect as well, all of which, again, subscribes to what Dr. Zaryāb and also Mr. Mehrdad have also been telling about the multiplicity of the meaning in this story. And as the last question, and thank you, Dr. Shahbaz. So we also have a question by Ingrid Braun. They mentioned, can you please situate this particular story in Zaryāb Rahnavard's work? Does it have a particular meaning in his production, maybe the collection of works in his oeuvre, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
I think this is another question for Mujib. I can say something to it, but
yes, this story is considered the masterpiece of Rahnavard, among the works of Rahnavard Zaryāb in Afghanistan. It is very popular. It is very famous and likable among all his works in Afghanistan. And there are lots of, texts available about this story in Persian. But unfortunately, with all the importance this story has, Still, it has not been translated in English, and as a friend mentioned before, it is very rich. I mean, in terms of symbolism, it is, I mean, relations with the mythologies, Indian mythologies, and it opens the way for lots of approaches. And the same is other novels of Rahnavard Zaryāb. They are full of symbols, full of references to the mythologies, different mythologies, to the Russian mythology and history, to the Indian mythology and history, to the Iranian, Persian mythology and history. So his novels are very rich for analyzing on the base of different schools of thought.
Only one thing to add to that, just imagine the story of psychoanalytic approach, for example, or the tree itself. Just look at the tree and a snake on it. You can remember the biblical story of the Genesis, right? And the original sin, you know. So it's so rich. It points to 1,000 directions. You cannot pin down this in any certain one sense. My point is, let me reiterate this as my last point. First of all, I have done many of these interpretations in my dissertation and in the work that is forthcoming in different levels of temporality and interpretation, only focusing on this around 400 pages. But what is important is that, for example, like a cognitivist approach, trying to reducing the meaning of this, or appropriating, let's say, not reducing, appropriating, enriching, right? Appropriating the meaning of this, saying that, okay, so we have certain structural, metaphorical structure even in everyday speech, and these are the same system of metaphors going on here, is simply losing all this richness and it's and the historical, political, social complexity of the context. So that's why I think the most important thing is not being to keep a open mind towards all interpretations to come.
Thank you very much, Hessam John. Okay, I would hate to leave these two questions, I mean, and exclude them, but if you don't mind, very quickly, maybe you can direct the, you know, the persons who have asked the question to maybe other sources. But anyways, so Pardis and Camille have questions. Pardis asks, Salam, can you talk, if you haven't yet, about repetition of words and sentences in his work too, please? And also Camille asks, what was the significance of mentioning the encounter of a snake with Abu Rayhan, maybe in contrast with Sultan? So again, very briefly, please.
Yeah, so I'll take the second one and leave the first one to Mujib. And so, yeah, the Abu Rayhan has two, is the only person who respects the snake, because he's the first anthropologist. He knows about the role that the snake plays in the original source where it comes from. So he knows about the people of India. He has done ethnographic work, and he respects. But at the same time, he has some. You say that opposite to Sultan, but he at the same time, he makes the snake object of his experiments too, to see if he dies or he loses his sight, if he gives them, for example, a kind of drug or not, meaning that he objectifies the secret and at the same time respect. It's as if he is the place, he's dubious about it, he's standing in between, he doesn't know what to do, right? So, but yeah, he has in the last cry for help, the snake says, "Why, Abu Rayhan? Why did you have to leave me or let me go?" Right? Meaning that finally Abu Rayhan too disappointed snake, unfortunately. So.
Thank you, Hessam John. And again, I apologize for asking you to be very brief. Mujib, are you even willing to answer the question that?
Yes,
Hessam?
I think the both questions were very interesting. Repetition is a technique in Zaryāb's works. He does it in his famous Gulnar and the Mirror. When he tries to give a kind of historical depth for his story, then, for example, the story starts, the novel starts that the mother of the mother of the mother says about the mother of the mother. He used this technique of repetition in many of his works to give his works a kind of historical depth, and it is like happening in many of his works.
Wonderful. So again, like his folkloric references, this is also a stylistic choice, basically.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Before getting back to both of you for a brief final remark, I would like to again thank all of the audiences for taking the time to be here with us. There will be a very brief survey. Always, we would be grateful if you could take just a few minutes to let us know how this session went and how we could improve. And of course, in this series, we won't have any forthcoming talks. That's why in this slide, you don't see the title of any talks, but I can promise that if we're alive, of course, we have a lineup of talks for the fall 2022 series and hopefully also for the winter of 2023 series as well. So I invite you to please check us out. You know, if you haven't liked the page on the Facebook page, please do so you can get notified of the forthcoming events. Also, Dr. Dekhani and I don't see Mr. Mehrdad's email here, but Dr. Dekhani has been kind enough to allow, if you have any questions, follow-up questions that you would like to send to him, please do so. Finally, Hessam and Mehrdad Aziz, anything else to mention before we say goodbye to our audiences?
Just thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Mujib John. Thank you, Mustafa John, and all Nazgul and other people who helped this session to be held so successfully and great. Thank again, Rahnavard Zaryāb family for the support of the talks as a whole and this one talk. And yeah, I invite everyone again to join us next year for the following talks and this Friday for the talk on the legacy of Zaryāb Rahnavard Zaryāb, 6:30 Friday.
In the Persian literature reading club,
Reading club, yes. Yes, in Persian, yeah. In
Persian, wonderful. And thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure having both of you, Hessam and Mujib Aziz. And Mujib, I know that you're also too busy, so thank you very much for taking the time to join us. With that, please stay if you don't mind, just for a very quick debrief at the end. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever you're located, and hoping to see you later. Thank you.